Okay, good evening, everybody. Okay, let's go through the normal statements to start with. So there's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass door behind you and to my left, and through the double doors onto the riverside behind you. Please meet at Tower House Car Park. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of this meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you are seated in the public gallery, it is possible that cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended that you make a member of the staff aware who can direct you where to sit. The Westgate Garden gates on the riverside are locked at sunset, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass door. So, welcome to the agenda part of the meeting of Cabinet. The Cabinet is part of the Council responsible for most day-to-day decisions. It is chaired by the leader, who is elected by the Council, and that's me, Alan Baldock. The other Cabinet members are as follows: Councillor Sol, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Finance; Councillor Castle, Cabinet Member for Property and IT; Councillor Hazelden, Cabinet Member for Housing; Councillor Dawkins, Cabinet Member for the Environment and Climate Change; Councillor Charlotte Cornell, Cabinet Member for Council Services, Culture and Heritage; Councillor Chris Cornell, Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Inclusion and Coastal Towns Champion; Councillor Ricketts is Cabinet Member for Tourism, Transport, Performance and Oversight, and is also the Rural Champion; and Councillor Connie Nolan, Community Engagement, Safety and Enforcement. The Cabinet collectively provides strategic leadership to the Council. Okay, the first thing on our agenda tonight then is apologies. Some big apologies, Vanessa?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. Okay, declarations of interest by members or officers. Have we had any already?
None in advance, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Anybody got any declarations to make before we start tonight? Okay, so Marie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a director on the Canenco board.
Thank you, that's noted. Okay, right. Third item on our agenda is announcements. I know we've got at least one or two, so who'd like to make an announcement? Councillor Hazelton, Pip, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As always, housing is a busy, fast-moving and complicated business, and really enjoyable for all the kind of hard work and late nights and stuff that officers put into the job. But I'd just like to highlight some of our Q2 figures about homelessness, because we've just to give a picture, we know that homelessness across the country is a massive issue. It's not just an issue for us as a district, but at the end of Q2, we had 170 households in temporary accommodation, which is down by 7 from Q1. 73 households are housed out of area, which is down from 83 in Q1. 29 fewer households in private accommodation, and 23 more in our own HRA temporary accommodation. The important thing, I think, apart from the, impact on those individual families, fewer out of district, fewer in numbers and so on, which is pleasing, although there's much more work to be done, is there's a cost saving, which I know, Cabinet members will be really pleased to hear about, particularly Councillor Sol there, that at the moment, we're spending £855 less per night in costs than in Q1, which over a full year, it would be over £300,000 saved. So not only are we doing a better job by those in need of our temporary accommodation, but we're also, really cracking down on the costs associated. And just one final thing is about, you'll remember back some months ago, we agreed to purchase some temporary accommodation units, and that's now picking up speed, and we've got 10 properties. We've got offers in and agreed, and the legal processes are going through, and there are others that are being scoped at the moment. So we look to having those come on stream fairly soon in the coming months. Thank you.
That's incredible. All good news. I think we all feel in our hearts that the misery of that person that's homeless with nowhere to go and moved around just like, bits in the game, aren't they? And that's not where we want to be. So fantastic news. That's really good. With the 10 units that are being in the process of being bought, would that be 10 families, or is it more people over to be homed?
I think there are a variety of sizes to meet because there's a range of needs, and I believe that most of the properties, unsurprisingly, will be ex council stock. So there'll be properties that we have knowledge of and know how to maintain and repair and so on. They'll be familiar properties to us.
Yeah, that's perfect. Good sized properties that will make a family home temporarily, won't they? That's fine. It's good news. Thank you for that, Pip. That's appreciated that. So let's move on to the next part of our agenda. No other announcements, by the way. Is anybody else? I've not checked. That's okay? Fine, thank you. Public participation. Do we have anybody speaking tonight? Nobody speaking tonight. Okay, then. So item 5 then is I need to seek confirmation from you that you're happy with the minutes of the previous meeting. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Thanks, Mike. That's Councillor Sol. And we can confirm by general assent if you're happy with it or make comments otherwise. We okay with that? Yep, nods all round. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So the minutes are confirmed. That's item 5 on our agenda. Okay, so references from committee. That's item 6. So we have the minutes from the Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of September. So, right, let's just get my papers and notes out here. So, okay. So, item 7 then, permission to consult on the cultural strategy. Right. So, I think just looking at quickly how this is going to pan out. Charlotte, could you please propose this agenda item, obviously introduce it, and before we hand over to debate, seek a seconder. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to us to agree to open public consultation prior to the adoption of the Cultural Strategy 2026 to 2036, which you can see in papers here today. I'm really pleased at the report we're presenting tonight, the draft of the strategy, but this is still just a draft, and we're asking the public now over the next 12 weeks to feed back on if we feel we are reflecting the cultural ambitions of the district in the way that they want us to. We have already consulted with many key stakeholders and key partner organisations all across the district, but now this is open to people in their own homes to have a look and reflect personally back to us. So we'd like to open this up for 12 weeks to the 5th of January 2026. It will be an overview in the middle of that time period as well, so a good chance to hear from other councillors as well on whether we're getting our ambitions correct. This is a 10-year strategy. It's cementing the importance of culture here to our economy, yes, but also to our joy and our challenge and our creativity and our ability to enjoy ourselves in our spaces and make fruitful and interesting works in those spaces and out of those places. We would like feedback on this, and that can be done online or indeed sent to us personally, and we will feed that back in. some really ambitious things in there as well that ourselves as the council, as a key body locally, will input. We are redeveloping the King's Hall in Herne Bay as a cultural anchor with a £2 million spend on the redevelopment. We are embedding cultural provision in our local plan, and through the town centre strategy process, we hope to identify areas where there are omissions, and in our key areas for redevelopment, focus some of those spaces on cultural provision. And we want to establish properly a district-wide cultural forum which can keep up and hold us as councillors and the council to account on how we are maintaining our cultural strategy and how we are holding ourselves to those ambitions which we hopefully will approve in early 2026. We are already well underway and continue to work with partners in Canterbury, hoping to make a bid for UNESCO City of Literature status at the end of next year. And we will continue through the cultural strategy to push the aims of festivals coming back to Whitstable, literature and storytelling being cemented in Canterbury, which is a city of stories, and music creation leading to a really bustling and vibrant Herne Bay, not just the seafront, but also throughout the town. So I am really excited about this report. Of course, there are other things which we can add in, which is why it's still just a draft, and we're very much waiting to hear from the public out there. Are we on the right track? What are we missing? What haven't we got enough of? Absolutely, this isn't closed yet. Want to hear from you, and I'm looking forward to the redrafted final. So I would like a seconder in order to send this to consultation.
Thank you. Mel's seconding that for you, Charlotte. Thank you. That's amazing. It's a brilliant start, isn't it, as a document for read, so I really chuffed with that. So anybody got some comments to add to that before we go too far? Mel to start?
Okay, so yeah, thank you, Charlotte, for introducing the report. It's whoever wrote it, it was an excellent report, a really good read, lots of information in there. So was it yourself? I don't know who wrote it, but anyway, whatever. So I liked a lot of the stuff in there, and of course it's going to consultation, so really interested to see who comes back. I guess a couple of points for me. You did mention music at the end, but yeah, I'd like to see a bit more emphasis on music, and also stuff about grassroots venues. I mean, I know directly we can't do much about it, but indirectly we could, maybe through different strategies, or what we, you know, through land planning or whatever it is, that we can incorporate into the council, you know, to try and get more grassroots music venues in our towns and villages and cities, because they're depleting. And also rehearsal space, because those musicians need to actually practice if they're charging people to come and see them. And there's a big lack of them in the town and everywhere, actually. Also, yeah, I like the bit about sense of belonging. I think, you know, to me that's massively important. If you can't see yourself in the surroundings around you, you immediately feel like you don't belong there. So especially for young people that you've mentioned in one of the ambitions, you know, if they feel like they can't relate to anything that's around them, then that's sometimes can be the cause of some of the issues that we all know about. And of course that's relevant to people of all ages and all needs. So, and then of course with culture as well, hopefully someone will bring this up. Maybe I should do the survey myself, but there needs to be that flexibility, I think, because it's always evolving and it's always changing. If you have a good culture, it will be totally different next year to what it was the year before, and that's what we want. So that amount of flexibility in that strategy would be great as well. But really looking forward to hearing what people have got to say and where we go next.
Fantastic. Definition of creativity there, Mel. It's the difference in creativity is the ever-changing world, isn't it? And that's fantastic. Alex.
Yes, I think this is fabulous, and I think it feels like when you sort of going through dark times and economic downturns and stuff, it feels like culture is often the first thing to go. And I think we've certainly had that from central government, you know, retraining ballet dancers as cyber people and all of these kind of things. It feels like it's an area that's been constantly under threat. And these things don't grow and work unless they're tended, unless they're supported. And I think what I noticed through that, and I think Mel mentioned it briefly, but I just thought it's a beautifully written line, which is Canterbury will be a district where everyone belongs, creativity thrives, culture is valued for its power to connect people, enrich lives and drive social and economic growth. How could you not vote for that? Wonderful.
And when we've got that plan that puts it in place, the building blocks, that'd be amazing. And I think just always reflect on that. I think the joy of having people from across the district, from every part of it, contributing to it is definitely going to be a shared plan. More creativity. That's really amazing. So, Mike.
Thank you, Alan. I would like to make a bit of a plea for an addition to the section on introduction to our district, because it doesn't really mention anything about the villages. And we've got some great cultural icons in the villages. I think just in my village, we had Henry Moore living there. We've got Joseph Conrad. We've got all the Ian Fleming connections. Mozart stayed in Bishopsbourne. All of this sort of stuff, and that forward there really just talks about the three towns. So if we're going out to consultation, I think a lot of people in the villages would say that. So let's get it in there before people raise that point.
I just wonder how much rehearsal space is in the village halls. Isn't that amazing? And some great gigs in pubs and across the district too. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's really good. Fantastic. Yeah. Any other points for anyone? I think we can. Well, do we need to take a vote on that? We do need to take a vote, so we'll do that in the usual way for the moment. So that's been proposed by Charlotte, seconded by Mel, and now we are voting now to allow this to be for consultation. Thank you.
And that's been carried unanimously, Chair.
That's great. Thanks for that. Right. Agenda item number 8. Nowhere near the same as the last item. Can't be. So at this time, this is the Regulator of Social Housing Inspection Report, and I would ask this to be introduced by our Cabinet Member for Housing, that's Pip Hazelton. So Pip, if you could introduce what's going on. Obviously Marie's here to come in afterwards, and also to seek a seconder after your introduction, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this item is about the Regulator of Social Housing Consumer Standards. And this evening, we're asking Cabinet to note the update. And also, a second thing is to resolve to set up a Cabinet Advisory Committee. And so what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes, if that's all right, to kind of set out. I think I've been banging on enough about it in Cabinet, so I hope you're all aware. I'm sure you are, but just to, for the record, that the Regulator of Social Housing introduced new consumer standards from April of last year. And the aim is to ensure safe and good quality homes, to improve tenant services and engagement. And the standards basically are set out as safety and quality, transparency, influence and accountability, neighbourhood and community, and tenancy management. So just to give you an overview, it's in the paperwork there, but nationally, 125 inspections have been completed since the new regulations were brought in. 55 of those were local authorities. Of course, there are other registered providers like housing associations and so on, but in terms of comparators with ourselves as a local authority, 55 have been inspected. And 4 have been found to be fully compliant, getting a grading, if you like, of C1. 17 as broadly compliant, C2. 31 as not compliant, C3. and 3 as C4 with very serious failings. And in terms of Kent, Ashford Borough Council was inspected a year ago and came out as a C3. And Medway in November of last year came out as a C2. And so the common causes of non-compliance are about poor stock condition data, insufficient tenant engagement, weak repairs service and complaint handling, health and safety non-compliance, things like fire safety, poor data collection or reporting, and governance and oversight weaknesses, and also resource constraints rather. You know, and I'll be fighting my battles in the budget setting tomorrow, I think. So just so that so that's the national picture. And so we started self-assessing back in early 24, before this actually came into law. So the officers have worked absolutely tirelessly, and we identified a number of areas of weakness, similar to the ones that have been found in the national picture. And we made a self-referral to the regulator for social housing back in January of this year. The reason we did that was the regulator for social housing encourages local authorities to, self-assess and where there are issues to recognise them, because you can't put things right unless you have first recognised that there's an issue. So that was the first proactive act that we took. And then there was the formal inspection process, was in July of this year. And when I tell you over 300 documents were submitted, and then tenants, officers, councillors were all interviewed, and meetings were listened into by the regulator for social housing, a cabinet meeting, audit, and so on. We're expecting our final inspection outcome next week, I think on the 15th of October. And so in advance of that, the service has developed a service improvement plan, and also how to improve tenant engagement. So we've got that, and officers are working to that service improvement plan already. And in the light of whatever the regulators' findings are for us, it will be updated, obviously, in light of that report. So the tenant engagement strategy is also under review. I'm very pleased to be able to report that health and safety compliance has improved, and political oversight and tenant involvement are things that we've noticed are essential for success. And so that really brings me to the ask really of you as a cabinet this evening, is that we'd like to set up a cabinet advisory committee, as outlined in the report. And I think I'll probably stop there, and I'll hand over to Marie as the lead officer to speak more about the ideas behind that. Thank you.
Thanks, Pip. That's appreciated. Marie, can you pick up from there? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I think the setting up of a committee is essential to have oversight of that service improvement plan. And I think acting as a critical friend to actually monitor the progress, to scrutinise performance against the plan and make sure that we're on track and hold us to account is an essential part of that process. The reason that we're recommending the Cabinet Advisory Committee is that we can actually co-opt tenants onto that committee, which will be an essential part of the scrutiny. We already have a really strong relationship with our engaged tenants, and we take regular reports on performance, complaints, we do deep dives on different areas of service delivery. But I think that combined committee of tenants and councillors will really provide a robust mechanism to actually monitor progress on the service improvement plan.
Just a couple of quickie sort of bits on that. What sort of structure were we thinking about, like committee members, routines of meetings, that sort of thing? Do you want to put any meat on the bones there, just to sort of get us into context where we're going?
So the obviously as leader, then you could decide the makeup and representation based on political representation as it stands. The chair of the group could be chaired by our portfolio holder. We get the judgment on the 15th, so we would be looking to have the first meeting probably before the end of October. We'd like to get this up and running, not waste any time, and start sort of building that committee up and relationships between tenants. Obviously, if you decide this tonight, then we can notify our engaged tenants tomorrow and talk them through the process. But I think the sooner we can get the committee set up, the better.
Yeah, that's fine. If I let Pip come back of that one, Charlotte, and then obviously to pick up with you, if that's okay. Have you got any thoughts on that process as being leader of housing, how you would sort of see that oversight, which is obviously the thing that concerns you when you mentioned in your statement about political oversight as well as being, a qualitative thing as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Marie, for that. Yes, so it would, what we would envisage is a politically balanced committee for good scrutiny and oversight, with tenant representation, with myself as the portfolio holder chairing that, because I've got, the knowledge, and I have frequent meetings on, all the relevant areas with senior officers, and I see the data sets, so that I have assurance. But the frequency of these meetings, I think, will depend on what the regulator for social housing comes back and says to us. So, as Maria suggested, we'd like to get the first one up and running, if it's agreed tonight, before the end of the month, if at all possible, so that we can, so that would mean asking yourself, Alan, as leader, to speak to the leaders of the other groups to identify membership. In the paper, it talks about a 3-1-1-1 or a 4-2-2-1 split, and I don't have any particularly strong views about that. And once we've had the first meeting, then we can scope out daytime, evening, we can look at frequency of meetings, and the frequency of meetings may well vary. It may be more frequent to start with and then move to to less frequently. There would still be reports back on our performance to Cabinet, that the ordinary reporting cycles and mechanisms would still be there, and I would still be right on top of the assurance, as portfolio holder. But it's this additional layer, and the benefit of this structure, this Cabinet Advisory Committee, is that it can also involve tenant representation. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Charlotte?
Just because of some conversations that I've had over the past week with Matthew Archer, I know that you're doing work looking at the structure of the company's advisory committee and whether that is delivering in the right format at the moment. And I know that this is an ongoing piece of work and unresolved questions. I equally know that wider Cabinet haven't yet been asked those questions. And there is some overlap with some of what you're proposing to do here with some of the ambitions of the company's advisory committee. So I appreciate what you're trying to do, but also there's an unresolved piece of work going on over there. And I think there's some grey area where these two overlap. I'm not sure if, I don't really know if if I'm being helpful or unhelpful here, or if the company's advisory committee, it does have similar ambitions. We don't put users on it. People do pay money to have their bins collected, and no users sit on that committee and contribute in. It's politically balanced. It's not chaired by me because it's critical. I listen in and it's of me. Are we going to have a model for one thing where we've got a completely separate model for another going on? Are these two completely exclusive discussions?
Good point. I kind of see it as completely different beasts, but good point. Chris.
Yeah, so just some weird techie governance questions, really. I think I disagree with Charlotte. I do think that they are distinct, and I think that the paper clearly articulates why you would have them as a distinct role. Obviously, we don't have many cabinet advisory committees. Historically, the Harbour Board used to have one. So I guess a practical question is, I'm assuming that this is not going to affect our ability to establish task and finish groups and other things because it will be an additional governance resource, question mark. The second is that the paper highlights that tenants and third-party representatives could be co-opted, but in the definition, we're only looking to co-opt tenants. So do we have an ambition to establish any other third parties, and what would they be, just to make sure that it doesn't get into a kind of contract type of thing? I wouldn't want, for example, a situation where you think, kind of makes sensible to have Cardo here because they are talking about some of it, but in the same way, it probably would be inappropriate because that would be a contract issue that we would have. But then there are other third parties that we support in order to establish and support tenants. So may they be relevant? And then I guess my third question is: have we considered a way in which scrutiny could be kept informed as to the structure? I think it's sensible that it's not a subcommittee of scrutiny purely because it does allow you to engage tenants. However, I'm also you don't want cross purposes, which is scrutiny saying we want a deep dive in this bit of housing, and that be not what your cabinet advisory committee have identified, because when they look at the strategic thought, that's the way. So I guess, is there a means or a mechanism we have considered by which scrutiny can feed into some of those discussions? Obviously, the minutes would be publicly available, but perhaps that is a kind of maybe a standing role for the chair of scrutiny in the political split out. And would we consider, I'm also personally of the opinion if we can get more tenants on it, the better. So it would be nice to have one. I think it would be cracking to have two, particularly if you talk about what the size is, and I don't know why we just don't agree that now.
Okay, Chris, good point. I saw a hand come up from over here. Who was it? Okay, Susie, you. Okay, go for it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for those comments and questions. In terms of the Companies Advisory Committee and this proposed committee, they are different. The Companies Advisory Committee is obviously complicated by the fact there are boards of trustees, and there's a different role in terms of it being a wholly owned company. So we will be revisiting that piece of work with all of LSG Cabinet, and we will be kind of just, what we're trying to do there is simplify what goes to each committee and the purpose of each committee, which, actually picking up on your point, Councillor Cornell, is exactly what we need to do here too. Because we are in danger of officers taking the same information to different places, and there's nothing more frustrating for everyone involved. The tenant engagement is a specific requirement of the regulator. Transparency around tenant engagement as well is really, really important. I think that sets it apart from other customers of other services. And obviously we're talking about people's homes, so it's way more meaningful to them. Arguably bins are very important, but somebody's home is absolutely their place of refuge and their place of sanctuary. So I think that gives it that extra weight. There's no impact on task and finish groups. They all operate outside the Constitution anyway. We can just do those. And the previous report we brought through about working groups actually gave us the leverage we need to be able to do task and finishes. So it doesn't impact on any of that. And I think the other thing to mention is the really useful role of scrutiny in terms of doing a deep dive every now and again into different topics. Housing is just one of those. So what we will do is we'll map out, as I say, what's going to which committee so that we're not doing the duplication and we're taking the right things to the advisory committee. The primary function of that will be the monitoring of the progress of the action plan that's coming out of this inspection. So that does set it apart from normal performance monitoring and lots of other things that we do. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just taking that and be practical about this. I think listening to what you've all said and what Pip said as well. I mean, the key bit is that we need to get a stable, sensible, well-structured committee in place quickly so we can really hit the ground running. And let's be honest with us, none of us are that, worried if we have to visit back in 6 months' time and slightly tweak things around a little bit to make sure that it runs spot on and we do what we do. It happens, doesn't it? And that's nothing that we need to worry about as a cabinet. We can do that, can't we? No reason to worry too much. But I think the only thing I'd like a bit of a steer from all of you is whether you minded to have a big-ish or a smallish committee, a 4-2-2 or a 3-1-1. 3-1-1. Say again, what was it?
It's 4-2-2-1 or 3-1-1-1.
Okay, you heard that. Are we on the smaller or the bigger? That's just an opinion on that. And Chris.
Yes, I'd be minded for a smaller committee, but more tenants where we can. I think the real benefit here is, to be honest, we're saying the tenant advisory group do more than effectively just judge how pretty everyone's gardens are once a year. They're holding us to account on standards which are established. And I think if we can seemingly engage as many of them as possible, that's all the better.
Any other thoughts on that, or should we just go for that? Yeah, Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Pip, just one question. Chris touched on it, the tenants and the third parties. Is there a definitive list of who would be put forward of those? Do we decide, or is it just open to who you deem suitable? And the only other thing, really just a positive that we've touched on, we've got into semantics, but this is nice. I think I just want to comment really that Pip and your team, that you've sort of started the fire, but you're trying to put the fire out. And I think that's great. You've sort of preempted the problems, the regulator's going to come, and it's nice to do that rather than we'll get the report and then, let's arrange it. So I think it's really nice publicly to say we're listening. We know what these problems were. You listed them off. You've told us for months what they are. And I think that's really nice for residents because, social housing is such an important thing to residents across the district. But it was just to ask about the subgroups. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Go ahead.
We can bring in third parties if we want to, if there's a need for that. There's no need for that in the very short, immediate term. The main thing is bringing in tenants and getting councillors and tenants working together to do that scrutiny. There may be parts of the service improvement plan that are impacted by third parties. So it may be for some of the meetings, if we are looking at a specific area, that we bring those third parties in for that meeting.
That makes sense. Yeah. Mel?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you. Just going forward, just wondered what a typical agenda would look like, just, so we kind of get a sense of what's going to be on there, so it's got a kind of purpose and direction, and it's kind of got a process to it, I guess. And then I guess you're going to have to get your terms of reference together as well, so it'd be good to see those soon as well. But just sort of what an agenda might look like.
Yeah, I think I would, before we, do you want to come back after Chris, Bob? Yeah. I was just really thinking that obviously it's almost the thing that the first committee meeting will have to reflect on what the regulator said and prioritise that agenda from that point to make sure that all of the things that are really requiring due attention are maybe they're their own headed or maybe they're lumped in together or whatever. So I think it will be up to the chair of that meeting to Chris and then Pip, if you can I'll get Marie to come back in after you, Chris. Sorry.
I mean, I just think we should crack on with it. I think the solution is probably to do what Mel suggested, which is to maybe come up with some kind of terms of reference, maybe run back to scrutiny. You'll solve a problem about, key lines of inquiry. The other thing I'd want to clarify is the portfolio holder for housing one of the three, one of the one, or separate? It's a separate line item here in under two, so it might end up being 411. Don't want to give away extra power, but I think we probably should include it in the numbers. But I'm very happy to effectively start the process, make sure that we've got a body in place which can hold us to account. And I think if we can subsequently just tie up a few of those things with the right people in the room, we'll be cracking.
That's fine. Did you want to add to that, Marie? Yeah, and then come. Yeah.
Sorry. There is a sort of draft terms of reference within the report, page 51 of the agenda.
Yeah.
And it talks about sort of the matters to be considered. I think the main focus is the service improvement plan, and it's the different areas that are included in the plan. And yeah, I think that's the starting point.
I think I agree. I mean, it's going to have to evolve, and it may well, change a bit. I know Pip's, and I'll just get Pip to round up anything as well. But has anybody got any other bits to add? Can I get you to round up, please, Pip, and see how you feel about this? Then we'll take it from here.
Yes, thank you, and thanks everyone for your comments and your input. It's very much about the scrutiny of and the driving forward for the assurance of the service improvement plan, which we've got in draft and is already being worked to, and I am scrutinising as an individual portfolio holder. In light of whatever the regulator comes down with, we will amend the service improvement plan, obviously to take into account what they've got to say. And we want to expand that role of assurance and scrutiny to be politically balanced and to include tenants. It will be transparent. It will meet, the requirements that we both have to do in terms of the social housing regulator and what we want to, it's part of our ethos as an administration. So there will be minuted, meetings and so on, and transparent. In answer to Chris's query about numbers and balance, I was anticipating that we would probably go for the 3111, but with substitutes identified from parties so that we do have good attendance, and that I would be one of the three, and the terms of reference and frequency and time of day we'll iron out and obviously report back on. So what I'd like to do now then is both ask you to note, but I also need a seconder, because I'm proposing that we resolve to set up a Cabinet Advisory Committee as described in the report. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. That's appreciated. Okay, thanks for that. So we need to vote on this, don't we? Yeah, so we need to vote. So by voting for, you are agreeing to this committee to be set up.
And that's carried unanimously, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's really good. Quite exciting to get that done, I think, and I'm really pleased on that. And I think it gives stability in the long term as well, going forward past vesting day even as well, because this will, we will try to work it so that it's actually to do with the housing stock held by Canterbury District Council. So we see if we can work that out as well somehow. That'd be really good. Thank you very much. Okay, just have a little pause and get myself in line again. Okay, right, item 9 is the update on the Canterbury Community Safety Partnership annual review. Now, this was down for Connie to introduce. We've had a chat earlier. Marie is going to do some of the background to this. We'll obviously all had a read up of the report anyway. But so just to get the debate over the way, I'm going to propose that. No, actually, just note this report, don't we? So we just note it. So beg his pardon. Problem over, as they might say. So please, contributions in a moment or two. Just get Marie to outline where we are. Thank you for stepping in there. Appreciate that. And we'll take it from now.
Thank you, Chair. So the Council Scrutiny Committee acts as the committee responsible for the crime and disorder function on behalf of the Council. At scrutiny on the 25th of June, the report was taken to them, which summarised the third year of the Community Safety Partnership Plan. The priorities remained the same as in previous years. There's a strategic assessment that's done each year, which looks at trends, crime data, newly emerging things that's cropping up across the district, and that's then reflected in the action planning process with the Community Safety Partnership. The Scrutiny Committee went through the Partnership Action Plan, noted the progress that had been made by the Community Safety Partnership, and they had a number of comments which are on page 62 of the agenda. So there were some comments about off-road biking, vapes, preventing fly tipping, traffic safety around schools. And within the community safety plan, there are targeted operations that happen throughout the year to tackle some of these priorities. I think scrutiny felt that the plan was very much city centre focused. So one of the things that we will take into account moving forward is making sure that there is a fair representation within the action plan around things that are happening at the coast and in the rural villages. And I would say that the operations that happen are based on need and trends and local data. So if it appears like during the summer, a lot of the antisocial behaviour was over at the coast, that's where operations and resources are targeted. So there's flexibility through the year to be agile in terms of that service delivery. I think it was noted in the committee as well that Cabinet were encouraged to look at the possibility of using Section 106 money for youth provision within the district. Obviously, there is a set process in terms of how that Section 106 funding has to be used, and that is part of the planning process. But I mean, just a little bit of good news is that we recognise that youth provision, that there needs to be more of it in certain areas. And we've just submitted a lottery bid which aims to support 2 voluntary sector organisations to deliver youth activities, especially focusing on the coastal area. So we look for funding opportunities as part of the Community Safety Partnership.
Thanks for that. Any comments from everybody to note that? I think it's quite an interesting one there. Okay, Pip, then Chris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Marie, for for talking us a little bit about the context of the report. So something I was particularly reflecting on was the reporting and referring to prevent radicalisation and talk about the panel. I suppose it's a question. It's not really about this report, but just it's timely at the moment. Sadly, is additional work taking place in light of the Manchester synagogue attack and and other issues within the wider national community. So there's that. I wanted to note that I note scrutiny talked about antisocial riding in the city centre, but as a ward councillor for Canterbury City Centre, I'm really pleased to say that just anecdotally it appears to have decreased. And it's, you know, just not taking your life in your hands, the Wild West, as it did feel like at one time. I know people aren't complacent about it, but I, you know, as someone who's regularly walking in, through and across the main roads and the high street, it's really noticeable. And there was also talk, I suppose I'm mindful as well of some of our county context here, that there's talk in the report about victim blaming language and work that it needs, and I'm very concerned that we don't find ourselves moving towards a position that used to be the case, where perhaps people well-meaning but maybe not fully understanding the context of particularly, say, domestic abuse, that we used to talk in the past about, you know, girls needed to keep themselves safe, and, you know, well, they shouldn't be walking round there, or they should, you know, they were asking for trouble if they were wearing, you know, particular clothes. And that's what I mean by victim blaming. And that I'm concerned that in the county context, there seems to be a rather worrying return to that sort of sense of victim blaming, and just really urge us as a council to continue to do, you know, the community safety partnership across our district continues to focus on locating responsibility where it lies, which is with perpetrators. Thank you.
Yeah, totally agree. Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you gather councillors in a room, they'll always tell you effectively that there's a new kind of crime wave somewhere. But I think the key element here is, you know, to be honest, we rely on our police colleagues to identify what the measure of need is, and we pull together a multi-agency response. And this report very clearly articulates the benefit of doing that in a kind of structured way. I'd just like to kind of flag up all the stuff under priority 5. I mean, it strikes me, to be honest, when we had all the antisocial issues in Herne Bay earlier on in the year, it's really lovely to be part of a council which considers youth work to be part of the solution and a lever that we can pull, rather than offensively just put more people with flak jackets on the streets to scare kids. We also have a solution which is about working out kind of very proactive solutions to them with local community organisations that can reach out in a way that we can't. So, you know, what's really lovely here is to see how Rise Grants effectively have kind of primed that idea of bringing sports organisations together to look at further bids. The young lady from Herne Bay who got picked up by the Taekwondo group and in 9 weeks won a silver at British Open. It's a great little story type of thing. And I've met some of the young men who were on the Level 1 Sports Activator Awards through Sports Connect in Northgate, and it's inspiring how they talk about how it's kind of provided a structure for their lives. So we'd love to be able to do more, but I think it's really important to say it's so important we are in that space and at least trying to do something when we could just kind of wait until the problem kind of occurred and then promise actually we're building the relationships quietly behind the scenes. So just I think the stuff on the Purple Partnership that we do is much underrated, and a big thanks to the team for their kind of quiet diplomacy behind the scenes on it.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think we'd all endorse that. Absolutely. I saw another hand up. Sorry. Mel, sorry. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a couple of points. Thank you for the report. So I just noticed that some of them are green, which is great, but for example, some of the training, like the county line training, would be useful to do that again. So I was just wondering, you know, is that once you've got it on green, is that crossed off and never to happen again? So some of those things could be repeated, I guess. And then on page 74, youth needs survey commissioned for hotspots in the district. I was just wondering when and if we can see the outcome of that survey.
Okay, thanks, Mel. Any comments on that, Marie?
So the part of the report with the green, red, amber is a look at last year in terms of what was achieved and what's been done. The priorities remain the same, and a lot of the training, like Prevent, that Councillor Hazelton mentioned, and some of the training you just mentioned, Councillor Dawkins, we do repeat because it's about keeping people up to date, fresh, and on message for that. It's also about spreading awareness to organisations that maybe traditionally wouldn't have thought in a different way. So where we're talking about domestic abuse, with the Beth Barnon scheme that we work with the police and licensed premises, it is about giving and raising awareness to issues like domestic abuse, like violence against women and girls, and using the frontline staff that businesses have, as well as different organisations, to be able to support women or survivors of domestic abuse in the right way in the moment. Yeah. So the survey of youth provision that was carried out by Prince of Wales on behalf of the partnership. That has been fed into some of the planning that we've done. So we've used some of that evidence, especially with the provision at the coast in Herne Bay, to actually feed into the bids that we've done as well. We wouldn't normally bring something like that to Cabinet, but there's no reason why we can't do an update as part of the next service planning for the Community Safety Partnership.
Yeah, thanks for that, Marie. Pip, did you want to raise that point we were talking about earlier on about the safe havens, or do you want me to do that? It's okay. Yeah, it was the we were chatting with the councillor. Obviously, it was the safe havens bit. I noted that it's sort of on hold, requires long-term funding, but it's just the any update on the safe havens bit. Obviously, with the university sort of kicking back in again now, pressures, especially with the LGBT community and other, if you like, they're slightly more vulnerable in their uncertain circumstances at the time, and being new to the town. So, you know, we do they know where the safe havens are, and are they updated, and do the people that are offering a safe haven actually brief their staff effectively? That's fine.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the safe havens are within businesses in the city centre. And as part of Freshers Week, we work with the universities, we work with the street pastors, and we do a lot of awareness raising of safe routes, of the safe havens and things like that. This work was previously funded by Safer Streets funding, so that funding sort of enabled us to do the lit routes, safe havens, and we've continued to work with the businesses and the student unions and the universities to promote that each year. So it's all on the Safer Streets website. As I say, we've got a really good, strong multi-agency group that works to support students, especially around Freshers' time.
Yeah, I think it's really important that as well. So maybe that's just an isolated case or two that's really staff in the venues being aware of their responsibility, let's call it that, to be there. So that's a really good point. Otherwise, there was a couple of, anyone got any other points to raise at all? They're pretty sort of getting down into the nitty gritty detail now, aren't we? So I think we should just note this, don't we? Yeah, so yeah, and I totally pick up on what Chris was articulating earlier, getting in there early with young people. It's no good blaming them. You know, we need to work with them, make life-changing decisions need to be good decisions, don't they? And giving opportunity for that to happen is something that when we can do it for every single life. We don't have to, we never have the opportunity to do every single child in every single circumstance, but as many as we can do in the chances that we can put out there, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So no waste of time in any of that. So every single child that's had another opportunity to make a good life decision through good youth work is a good thing. It can never be a bad thing, can it? That's really good. So thanks for that. Let's just get ready for the next bit of the agenda. Now, this next bit is item 10, the annual corporate performance report. And the performance tonight will be launched by Councillor Ricketts. So, okay, Alex, if you'd like to introduce the report, where we are, call for a seconder, and then we're more than happy to open up for discussion. And I know Caroline is here to take any questions from any of us, as well as update as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's just to note, isn't it? So I don't need a seconder. Not that I'm sure I wouldn't get one if I did need one. So I'm very pleased to be presenting this evening. And I think, as with a few things, it's not the first time that a lot of us have seen this before. But I think seeing it in its final format, and first and foremost, I think it looks really good, which is important, because a lot of the documents that we put out sometimes, can be a bit weighty, and I think this is a really nice piece of work. But there's something more serious behind this, which is what we want to get at. This is a really important document in not just measuring where we are, but also where we want to be. And I think it's very different to the sort of documents that we've produced in previous years. And I suspect there will be some clamouring both here and perhaps in the scrutiny committee, because everybody has their favourite stat. There were a lot, and I think that there was perhaps a sense that we were collecting information on stuff because we'd always collected information on it in some areas, and reporting on things that were important in some areas because they're historically important, but weren't actually doing anything to drive performance, weren't actually doing anything to make a difference. And what we've tried to do with this report, and when I say we, I'm such a tiny, tiny part of that we, that the team that put this together, and indeed, as you'll go on to hear, across the whole organisation, has worked really hard to pull together some measures, some KPIs that really speak to what it is that drives the everyday business of delivering council services. I think it's a document that council officers could read and recognise what they do in their day jobs. I think it's something that residents could read and recognise the services that they receive, and I think it's something that us as councillors can have a look at, and particularly opposition councillors can see plenty in there. For fans of red and green arrows, there are still some red and green arrows in there, and there's still plenty of that to go around. But unashamedly, I wanted to draw out some of the successes in this, because there's a huge amount of information in there, and I think we're allowed to start each paragraph, as long as we're including the negatives as well as the positives, that we can blow our own trumpet a little bit on behalf of the officers that are doing that work. And there's a lot to pull out, but I think from a personal perspective, obviously my mind goes straight to park and ride usage, which is up 10.7%, and there are some other good parking stats in there for parking fans. And I know they're probably listening at home right now. 45 rent concessions given to organisations that support our goals. Housing triage down from 10 weeks to 3 weeks, which I think goes to some of the things we were talking about earlier on. These are real outcomes that are affecting people's lives. 76 school safety operations. And we've drawn out some of these things just to show what positive work's being done. Where we've looked at new measures and where we've looked at new things, we've tried wherever possible, and the work that's gone into this, to provide that historical data. So it's not a case of putting new measures in and going, right, now we're going to measure this, but we can't tell you how we're doing because we'll have to wait a year, which perhaps might have been the case in the past. Where we're putting new stuff in, wherever we can, we've got that historical data. And a new thing, comparing that data nationally and locally and seeing how we're doing. We're even reporting on things that we probably don't necessarily have any control over, but give the rest of the information in here some context. So, for instance, going back to the travel area as well, we're looking at bus and train usage where we can. So it's not stuff that we necessarily control, but without that information, and quite rightly, when we talk about our transportation within the district, people go, well, what about bus and train usage? Even though it's not within our control, it is important to have that whole picture. So I think this is a really good whole document. And the final thing I want to say is that what it does is it ties together a lot of work we've been trying to do, I think, as Cabinet and as this administration. We've got the 4 corporate priorities of greener, better, fairer and stronger, and we've put those measures within that, so it speaks to how we're delivering on those and what it is, what the concrete actions are to those. And again, we've mapped against those UN Sustainable Development Goals to see in our own small way what it is that we're not just measuring our own performance, but we're trying to measure our small contribution to making the world a better place. And I cannot commend this report more highly than that. So I shall pass over to Caroline to actually give you some useful detail.
Thank you very much. Council Officer 4, as I am this evening. I don't think I want to add an awful lot to that because that was rather nice. But I would just say from, I suppose, mine and my team's perspective, and having had the kind of performance gig, if you like, for a decade or so now, it was a really nice opportunity to be able to kind of take a wholesale review of how we'd done it before. And I think from an officer perspective, that ability to add that extra dimension to what we're reporting on. So obviously the metrics are hugely important in the quantitative stuff, but it's also nice to be able to say we did a thing on behalf of, and actually it mattered. And so kind of bringing that element, that slightly more narrative, qualitative, case studies, deep dives, whatever you like in there, all of those things are things we have, but one way or another put work into and achieved. And I think that's, again, being slightly sentimental, but from an officer perspective, it does make it feel, I think, even more tangible rather than having everything reduced quite to the granular. I think, as I say, you need that, it gives that kind of multi-dimensional thing. And I would say as well that my team and I did many workshops with not just every single head of service, but also lots of the members of their teams. We spent 3 or 4 hours on each service at the outset, and then we refined those. So all of the services have had really direct involvement in the kind of iterative process, which has led us to these proposed KPIs as they are in front of you now. So this isn't somebody, I haven't gone and sat in a room and kind of made stuff up. It's, I think people have been very engaged in it, and actually they've really wanted to be. And I think for everyone, it's nice to be able to kind of, hate the expression, but the golden thread between that corporate document, the corporate plan, which you guys have obviously developed and come up with, and what we do. It's the, the janitor that put the space shuttle on the moon or whatever, isn't it? But I think just finally, I think to Alex's point about we do still have some of those in there. We were also really keen. We didn't just want to throw out babies in bathwater. Lots of the data we'd collected is still very relevant. It's important to see the trends. And I think, as you say, that kind of those contextual measures there as well. So I think from the officer perspective, it's been actually a lot of work, but a very rewarding process. That's from me.
Mike first, because he's been very quiet this evening.
That's
So, and then when we go, the other 3 of you second. So come on, Mike.
That's very kind of you, Chair. I mean, when we first talked about having a corporate plan based around the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest, and how it was going to look. And now I can see this. I think it's a fantastic document, and it's more than a corporate plan. It's really if you were to give this to someone, you could just say, this is what the council does, and this is how it's doing it, so you can judge it. And I think that's really good. I do have some criticism over some of the data. I mean, I think it's really good that we are including the historical data. And when we've got 3 or 4 years worth of data, that's great, and we can see the trend. There do seem to be some areas though where we're only including 1 year's worth of data, and I wonder why that is, because perhaps even there's a comment saying it's gone up or down, but we haven't got the other data to explain that. If I think just to be to show that we are not hiding anything, if we're only going to show 1 year's data for some categories and 4 years data for others, we should either include everything or state that the data doesn't exist for certain reasons, because it's not clear to me on some of the categories that that there may be a data that just isn't included for other reasons.
Yeah, good point, Mike. I think that's straightforward enough, isn't it? I think it's pretty much where we are. Chris, no particular order now.
So every political group has its governance or KPI geeks. Obviously, me and Alex have found our position. I'm kind of quite sad that Councillor Watkins isn't here in order to kind of like give us a management discussion. And I'd be really interested what he thinks about increasing KPIs from 30 through to 74. It's certainly a very robust piece of work, but it strikes me effectively that this is so chalk and cheese from what the previous kind of KPI thing, that we should kind of note that. You know, there is a general kind of pervasivity sometimes that thinks that every council needs to run for themselves like a corporate organisation, and you need 4, 5 KPIs at most. And basically you establish what the basics are, and then you'll prove you're doing it brilliantly by having a variety of metrics which are largely vanity projects, but they prove that you're efficient. And I think if people looked at the last KPIs, they'd be surprised at why we measured ourselves by the numbers of people going to the King's Hall, the number of 3-star Active Life memberships, the number of parking tickets offered. They down the pub go, well, so the only thing you're measuring by is how much money you make? This is a completely different approach, right? This is about saying that local authorities aren't corporate bodies that measure themselves entirely by the operating balance. They're mission-led organisations which exist to make a difference in their local community. And the sniff test is if you have a conversation, the things that people care about, how many rough sleepers there are in the town, how many council houses you've got, how long it takes to do that planning application, those should be the things which are in your corporate plan, even when sometimes you don't have an amazing ability to be able to shift them all, because people want you to have an answer to those types of things. And with local government under the stress that it is, this KPI document, more importantly, sets a direction. It kind of goes, what are we for? Well, we're for more open spaces and more trees. We're for park and ride and more buses, even when we can't control them. We're for more council housing and buying up our TA in order to be able to reduce that. We're about improving housing standards and reducing evictions, even when they're affected by the private sector. We are for upholding planning decisions and sometimes taking on the big guy when effectively they come and challenge us. These are things which, if we can say what we're for, other people can turn around and go, well, I'm for that too, and here's a cracking idea, and let me pitch it to you. And that's the big thing about this KPI framework. It's setting that vision and saying, if you are on the journey too, so are we. Come and join us. And I just can't say how refreshing this is to have a KPI framework which feels mission-led and not effectively just patting on our back. There will be people who come and you go, well, you've got this wrong, haven't you? You know, all the data doesn't exactly add up. That's fine. It's about having more transparency than we really need and about keeping our eyes high. And I think, Caroline, the hard work that your team have done in working with teams is about saying to all of our staff, we've got that ambition and what's yours too. And I kind of think if they have proposed these things, then those are the things that we should be going for. Because ultimately, we're just a group of people all on this journey together. I can't commend the work enough.
Thanks, Chris. That's amazing. Said about 25 things that I was going to say, but that's fine. But I'm glad you did because you're so passionate about it. Mel? Well, carry on. I've completely lost track who's in the set. Can we have a show? It was Mel and Pitt, wasn't it? And was it Charlotte as well? Let's go left to right then. Mel, you're first.
If it's given. Just totally given. Oh, it's only a couple of comments, really. Yeah, love the layout of it, just the design and all the colours. I mean, just you know, you could have that on your coffee table. No, but I mean, it's really, really easy read and great cross section. See exactly what's going on, like I've said. Kind of the green. You know what I'm going to say about the green emissions. We know that isn't our own operations, and whoever's sitting on that scrutiny committee delivering this, when that plan goes to the other councillors, can they make sure that if I'm not there, to make sure that they know that metric is all of the estate, including all the housing and the council house and stuff. That's why it's so big. And as soon as we get a new baseline, we need to stick that in the ASAP. And I just guess the proof's in the pudding when it does go to scrutiny, because ultimately it's the rest of the councils across the council who want this report, need that report, so they get that information. So they're going to be the ones who you're going to find out basically what it's like. So I'll be interested to be listening in on that meeting to see what people think of it. But from my point of view, I think it's great. Also, I'm not sure if you can tell me, but on page 82, it says you're monitoring cycle journeys being taken. And I was just wondering how you're going to do that, if you know.
I believe that at some point in the future we will be able to monitor it. We don't have the kit yet, but we wanted to put it in there to demonstrate ambition that that's something we will be able to monitor. Again, not another one of those ones that we're not necessarily going to be able to demonstrate that we've driven huge, well, that's the wrong word, driven, I suppose, huge improvements, but it is a really important thing to be able to monitor and check out. So I don't know what the sort of timescale is for that. Have you got any insight or?
Not specifically, but I know that we're looking at the SEAL project at the moment, so that would be the route through which we'd be able to adopt those sensors. So we are definitely looking at it. As you say, it's in here, so that's the ambition now.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. I think just picking that up, it's going to be, I can almost imagine a few people saying, well, if you can't measure it, why is it in there? And that is the point that Chris makes and Alex makes. Well, this is about our ambition. And we have ambition and vision and shape. And officers need to know why they're doing what they're doing. And their work, their hard work, goes to achieve the ambition that we all share, including them. So actually all it does is drive the reason for actually finding that data in the first place. And if it sits as an empty box for a couple of years, so be it. But if we've been looking for the answer, that's okay too, as far as I'm concerned. I don't have a problem with that. So that's fine. Thanks, Mel, for that. I mean, it's a good point. Pip, next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I just want to echo everybody else's comments. I think it's brilliant. My one word that I wrote down when I was reading the papers was fab. And I'm not a sort of data geek or whatever, so I thought, oh dear, this is going to be really dry, and it isn't at all. It's really readable, and I just thank officers for massive amounts of hard work, and I'm particularly pleased that. You've said it yourself, Caroline, but that you and your team spent time with, lots of different teams, lots of different directorates to make sure that, what you were putting in there makes sense to those officers and the service that they're there to deliver. And so on that, I know we're not kind of taking amendments, as it were, because this is just to note, but there is something that on pages 92 and 93 of where there are some proposed new KPIs, there are 3 that relate to the Decent Homes Standard. And in conversation with officers, the relevant officers feel that it would be nice to take those 3 KPIs into one KPI, basically percentage of homes meeting the Decent Homes Standard, and that cutting it out into 3 separate ones is unnecessarily confusing. And I think in terms of the reporting back that we have to do in any case to the social housing regulator, it makes sense to keep it as one. So that would just be my suggestion, if that could perhaps go in the minutes to scrutiny in whatever form it needs to go. But otherwise, it's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, that's absolutely fine. That's 71 then.
Yeah, Yeah, we've got plenty to play with, so we can afford to lose a couple. No, I think you mentioned that beforehand, and I think it makes perfect sense. And again, that goes to the point of what officers are measuring, what officers are working towards. So it makes sense to reflect what it is that they're doing in their day jobs rather than drawing out unnecessary details. I think good plan.
Yeah, that's amazing. Charlotte, please. Thank you.
Excellent report, really well done. Wait for a slew of copycat reports to spring up in councils modelling ours, because this is really, it's really beautiful, it's really accessible, it's really interesting. And I do think people will use this as a model across the country. So very well done. Just for clarity and just to pick, the customer wait time for the telephone, I assume that's seconds. It's in stronger, we don't say, but there's a couple of moments in the report where the metric isn't quite clear, and that would be really useful. And also in stronger, the percentage of minor applications dealt within 8 weeks of planning applications. And if they are planning applications, what is minor? And 75% is our target, which is also the lowest amount there has ever been resolved within 8 weeks. Just a little query on that. I'd like that whole KPI, if possible, just to have a little more clarity around it. What is a minor application? Are these all minor applications or unextended ones? Because, of course, applications can be extended by the applicant's will. And I think this should be a percentage of unextended minor applications, and offer some clarity as to what minor is, please.
Yeah, I think there's probably is actually quite a lot of little bits like that through there, because I think the interesting thing about that is, Charlotte, you and me, who's not a great geek for stuff like this either, have actually read it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the point being, we've read it and we thought, well, I don't really understand that.
Yeah.
Well, if we didn't understand it, but that's okay. It's what the point being, let's make it understandable then.
The only reason it sticks out is that in every other way, this is a completely legible, engaging, readable document, which most KPI reports never are. So when you've only got one or two to pick at that like that, it's not a criticism. This is just, we're going to get it pretty near perfect. But I wanted to reflect the planning problem, because it is certainly picking up in my inbox, and I don't, maybe fellow councillors feel the same, that some uncontested minor planning applications, people are concerned about the length of time they take to resolve. So I'd like clarity around that KPI. I think it would be useful to us and to our opposition friends.
Yeah, I take the point on that, and I think we used to have a large number of different planning ones, and I think that possibly is something that we could do with not necessarily re-including, but including the spirit of the new, but also some of the data from the old. So I think we can have a look at that. I know some work actually has gone on behind the scenes to have a look at those application completions. And we might look at actual numbers as well as percentages, I think, which would be quite handy just to fill in that picture, because I think that gives an idea of the amount of work that goes into it as well. So it provides a little bit of explanation. But yes, I think we can take that away and have a look at the planning ones, and by the time it goes to scrutiny, have a bit more detail.
Yeah, great one. Did you want to come in late? And then I think Chris was come back as well.
It's only a really quick one. I'd like to make it 72, and these are very portfolio based, but I spoke to the bid a lot, and they really pushed the numbers of footfall in the high street and just how we are up as a district compared to everybody else. And there's museums, there's really great KPIs. I know it's not our data particularly, but I don't know if we can shoehorn that in there as number 72. I know it wasn't what this is for, but I just quite like that, because they're really positive about the work they're doing.
I think between you and Charlotte, we're back up to 73 now.
Oh, yeah. Let's just round it to 80 with loads of planning ones, because I love planning ones. No, sorry. Anyway, sorry. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Caroline.
No, it's a really good point, actually, because stuff like that is good news. But also, we were just talking about that, weren't we, about early interaction with young people being a huge benefit to their lives and their decisions and their life choices. And that's, you know, we are committed to that as a council, aren't we? And that's a good measure. Something maybe we can think about that. I think it's stuff there to do. Chris.
Yeah, just picking up on Charlotte's point, I think the the key point here is, whilst it looks like we've got loads of KPIs, we've actually got far more than this. There'll be a whole variety of metrics which also sit massively underneath. So there's like two baskets. So I think in terms of simplicity, I think this document should be something you could give somebody and they all understand. And if that is something where we get to a point where you're saying, you know, seeking to put so many caveats on something that it's really complicated, then it should sit as a metric, and we should just have like a clear line of explanation, and we should effectively say to scrutiny, we're also not hiding these things. These are, you know, this is the other ways in which we're seeking to measure. Otherwise, you just end up defining something so long it doesn't fit in a box. And I think that it should be that these are about establishing the ambition, and we should remember that these are indicators. We're also going to have a metric bank, which will sit separate.
Any other comments, anyone? No, it's amazing. I just wanted to say thank you, really, from that. I think it's just an awesome piece of work, actually. And I think when way back at the start of this administration, where we went for this bonkers idea and took all the abuse and all of the "you must be mad," the typical lefty look at life, you know, don't take the reality, just how different it is actually in the real world, and how this is actually a changing document. This is a way that we see our administration and reflect our administration. And the fact that we're not afraid as an officer team, nor as councillors, to actually take on the challenges that are before us and make a difference. Because what's the point of being a councillor? What's the point of being somebody working their butt off at a council officer stage if you can't feel that you're actually making a difference, and all you're doing is just batting things back over the hedge all the time? And that's not what we are. We want change. We want change for our residents to be better. And then we need to measure that change. And this is a way of measuring, I think, the change within the direction that we set out right at the beginning. It was revolutionary different. There's very few councils have ever done this before. We're one of the first handful that ever has. And I think this is the first council that I know of that have actually got this far and started to not only set out their ambitions in their corporate plan, but actually to measure their outputs against the corporate plan directly. And I can remember having arguments, but also discussions with people that really feel passionate about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and just pointing out that it's the tiny differences that you make that actually add up to make a difference in the world that we live in. It's not that we're here to solve the world's problems. We're here to do our little bit towards it. And that also makes people aware of what we're doing. And those people can also feel really good about what they're doing. And I think the officers, perhaps in their own small way, contribute to it, and their own small way can feel very proud of the tiny little things they do, step by step, day by day, decisions they make that just reflect a better outcome than what they would before. So I'm absolutely delighted this. It's the second part of, if you like, that long-term vision that we had right in the first days of our administration. And long may it continue. And I'll be absolutely chuffed to bits if we can take this forward. And other councils are very welcome to copy our ideas. And who knows, maybe a unitary authority would be very welcome to copy our idea as well, wouldn't they? So let's see where we can go with all of those big ideas and big ambitions. So thank you for all of you. Thank you to the team. Absolutely amazing. And perhaps a big celebration at the office would not be a bad thing, would it? Sorry. When you bring them all together, we'll do that again. So that'd be amazing. Thank you so much. Okay. We just note that report, and obviously, clearly, we're happy to note that report. And I shouldn't have said about proposing it, but I'm quite happy to second it as well. So we just note it instead, shall we? Thank you. The next one is item 10, and the performance this time is by Charlotte, which is just going to bump us all down to earth with a huge bump now, but maybe not. I think we could all be excited about this as well. So the contracts annual performance report, which I would ask Charlotte to introduce, and Nikki's here to help out. And do we need to vote on this? Just note it, is it? Just note it again, so that's really good. So I won't make a mistake this time. So over to you, Charlotte, please. Thank you.
Yes, just this is just to note, and it went to scrutiny earlier in the year. It was a really interesting listen and debate at scrutiny, and we certainly took some action points forward, which we've been working on ever since. So the contracts provided, this details a review of the year's performance in public toilets, our waste collection, our recycling, our buildings cleaning, dogs, allotments. The contracts team really do quite a wide range of things. And there's lots of metrics in there, and some of those were reflected in the report that we've just seen with ongoing KPIs, so they can be monitored more holistically as well. I'll pick out some just key points with either points of information or just where the data's a bit curvy, why that's so. So number one, I know a few of you have reflected to me, you've been receiving questions on Tetra Paks, and it's mentioned in the report from end of March 2026, we have to, under simpler recycling, be collecting Tetra Paks for recycling. Now, Kent County Council are the disposal authority, and they are struggling a little bit at the moment, and might be some good questions for my Kent County Council colleagues just to ask how Kent are getting on preparing for the recycling of the Tetra Paks, which by law we have to do next spring. So we will collect them on Kent's behalf to recycle. To their fairness, there is only one disposal facility in the entire country that deals with Tetra Paks. So anyone who's listening and looking for a business opportunity, there you go. Second, communal recycling. We continue to work with the team to make sure that our communal recycling is up and running next spring, as it absolutely should be. I've reflected to you all before lots of the complexities involved with that. Yes, it's routing. Yes, it's bin provision. But it's also things like crews knowing the gate codes and making sure that those gates are accessible and open to our crews. The team are doing a fantastic job in reaching out to all those spaces. So we are as ready as we possibly can be. Lots of the data, the skewing, where there's been an uplift, for example, in missed residual bins, mainly due, as you all knew earlier this year, to the rerouting issues we had. All the new domestic properties that had come on, all the new build in our area over the many years, we had to reroute. The routes just didn't make sense. They didn't make sense logistically nor environmentally. And it was a good time to look at how we ran our trucks and why we ran them. As we began to bed in those new routes, of course, we lost knowledge. People weren't on the same, the ladies and gentlemen collecting the waste weren't on the same routes often that they had been before, and often local knowledge is invaluable. You know that Mrs. Smith always leaves her bin just a little bit tucked behind the rose bush. Suddenly that was gone, and bins were missed. And it took some weeks for that knowledge to be recollected. And we had some really tricky areas, especially in some of our more rural areas. That knowledge is really, really, really important. And it's really easy to get literally lost. I think we are confident that has bedded down now. And thank you very much to the local ward councillors, to Mike and to a couple of colleagues who aren't here, who worked with us really specifically on some problematic areas in otherwise in rural patches. You'll also note that our RCVs, bin lorries, we are moving to running them on HVO fuel, hydrotreated vegetable oil instead of, diesel. And this will be more costly in the years to come. And that we pay a price for being greener. But that's a decision that we as an administration we want to take. And so that is in the report as well. But when we come next year and the costs have risen to run our fleet, that's a political decision. We're making sure we have a greener, more sustainable, long-term outlook for our delivery trucks. There's lots in there. Happy to take any questions, but just wanted to pull out those highlights from the report. And thank you to other councillors and scrutiny for doing a good job of this one before as well.
Thanks, Charlotte. It's also good to have that feedback from scrutiny too, isn't it, to be honest about it. It's the whole point of scrutiny. We're not worried about that at all. Mike first and then Pip. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. On the recycling percentage, I know we've got the latest government figures that are over a year old, yet the report does tell us that we submit information quarterly. Is it possible to use that quarterly data to even get a draft figure in the report every year for what the outturn might be for the previous year, just as a guide, even if it's just got a star next to it and said that's a draft figure, or is the calculation too complicated that we can't do it from the data that is submitted?
I believe we aren't the holders of the original data, the disposal authority would be, so it would be for them to report back to us.
Sorry, the report says Kent County Council must provide the council with the disposal data to be input.
Yeah.
So Kent County Council provides us with the data, so we then have it and we input it quarterly.
Yeah.
So we do have the data.
Oh, I don't know if we have it
Right,
quarterly.
okay.
I'm sorry. I will ask Sarah and let you know whether we have it quarterly.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
I only just noticed
No,
it. when
good
we-
question. We'll ask.
The other question is subscribers to the Green Waste Service have dropped off again. Just for clarity, are the figures subscribers or bins? Because there's a difference between the two. And do we get any feedback as to why? I mean, are we happy that everyone's now composting at home, or is cost a factor? And I just ask that as we're going through the budget setting process, and we always look at the costs of green bins. You know, there's no point hiking up the cost of green bins if we lose more money because people no longer use the service. I just wondered, have we bottomed out? Any thoughts on that?
The data in that for the last year was only up to the 5th of May. So we'd have to bring another 5 months worth of data into that. But, and these are very much for our live discussions tomorrow, whether we have reached that precipice of cost pressure. I won't, I think you and I and officers will have that discussion in the round tomorrow as we approach the budget setting process, but it's certainly a key consideration as we look to do that.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, was it Pip next? Yeah, thanks.
Yes, thank you. The only thing I just wanted to reflect was the, I think there's 65 freedom of information requests that I saw in there, and I just thought that's such a high level, it kind of does reflect such a high level of interest in this area and how important it is really to the public. And I suppose when I saw that, I thought, yeah, well, everybody said before I became a councillor, it's all about the bins, because it is such an important area. But I did just wonder whether there is maybe some more transparency that we could have on our public websites, which might then reduce the need for FOIs, which would reduce officer workload. I'm not necessarily expecting a full answer today, but it did just kind of go through my head, really.
Thanks, Pip. That's a good point. Susie?
Thank you, Chair. It's something we keep under review all the time, certainly when we get peaks in FOI activity in certain service areas. Where we can, we do publish as much as possible. Unfortunately, sometimes people are asking for FOIs in a format that doesn't match the information in the way that we're presenting it on the website, so it then takes officer time. There are rules around it, and we are trying to be stringent with those rules so that we're not wasting officer time where we don't need to. But it's a very fine line because we do want to be compliant. We've got to play the game right.
And certainly we're not shying away from any FOIs always, and I think some of the KPI work that has been done might help to put some of that information more transparently and accessibly in the public domain, hopefully reducing the need for some FOIs. You know, I'm a good fan of FOIs myself, so Kent County Council, you know, sure. But if we can put our data out there publicly, we absolutely will do. And our email addresses are always up there on the website. So if people do want to know something and we know it, they can always approach us as cabinet members and ask us.
It's good points. Any officers want to add anything to before we need to note this, don't we? So we're happy with that. Thanks, Charlotte, for presenting that. Okay, happy to know then, yeah? Nods all around. Thank you very much. Okay, and just get ready for the next one. Item 13, lucky for some. So, Mike, I'd like you to introduce the capital outturn report, please. Revenue report, sorry. Capital.
It's revenue first.
Oh, revenue. I beg your pardon. Item 12 first. I've jumped to 13, so this is unlucky, but there we go. So revenue first, and then obviously follow through to the capital outturn as well.
Thank you, Alan. I understand why you would get confused because it's such an exciting topic. And it's probably unlucky for you that I've made a few notes about what I want to say on this. There are a number of things you can be certain on in the world of accountancy, and the first is the certainty of numbers, that 1 and 1 will always equal 2. And the other is that in the world of accountancy, that it is a world full of deadlines and annual events. And we're now in October, and every October, as Canterbury's shops start to fill up with Christmas decorations and the smell of gingerbread lattes wafts down the high street, I am reminded in my role as Cabinet Member for Finance of everyone's favourite festive financer, Scrooge. Now, work is currently underway on spreadsheets of budgets future, and we are constantly monitoring spreadsheets of budgets present. But tonight we are visited by spreadsheets of budgets past. After its most recent visit to the Scrutiny Committee on 3rd of September, which did not result in any recommendations to Cabinet. Now, like A Christmas Carol, this agenda item tells a story, not just of numbers and budgets, but of resilience, responsibility, and a deep commitment to the people of Canterbury. The report before you acknowledges the financial challenges we faced, from inflationary pressures on the ongoing cost of living crisis, and the landscape has been anything but easy. Yet despite these, the General Fund closed the year with a modest underspend of £18,000, which is a testament to the prudent financial management and the dedication of officers. Now, our political opponents criticised us for reopening the Stowe Park and Ride, yet parking activity in all 3 park and rides has increased more than expected. The introduction of the banded car parks continues to be popular, with off-street car parking income exceeding expectations. And more significantly, our housing revenue account saw significant surpluses due to changes in the accounting reporting of finance costs. Now, this enables us now to strengthen our financial foundations and also gives us the ability to reinvest in the services that matter most, safe and quality homes and support for most vulnerable residents. Since being elected, we made strategic decisions that will benefit our district for years to come, from investing in cyber security to safeguard our digital infrastructure, to working on a cost reduction plan for temporary accommodation. And we've shown that we're not just reacting to challenges, but we're anticipating them. All of this is even more important as we look towards local government reorganisation, and we will hand this district over to a new unitary council on a sound financial basis and with systems fit for the future. Our commitment to transparency and accountability is clear. Every pound spent has been scrutinised and every variance explained, and all laid out in this report. And when we've seen overspends in temporary accommodation due to an 87% increase in demand, we've responded with action plans and not excuses. But this isn't just about balancing the books. It's about building a district where everyone feels supported. We had to increase our investment in homeless prevention, and we've improved our housing stock. These aren't just financial decisions, they're moral ones. And let's not forget the human side of this story. Behind every budget line is a team of dedicated professionals, councillors, community partners, working together with officers to deliver for our residents. And their work is the heartbeat of this council, and it's reflected in every number in this budget report. Now, it says in the agenda papers that this agenda item is for noting only. I think it's worth more than a simple note. It's a year-end report on the council's activities, and it shows a council that's continued to deliver services and work hard for its residents within the financial constraints that are put upon us. We're not complacent, and we'll always strive to improve. But I'm not just going to note this report, I'm noting the hard work of everyone in this council in delivering for the residents of this district. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, and spot on. Does that cover the capital outturn point as well, Mike, or do you want to add some more points to that? Yeah, that's fine. I didn't know whether you wanted to roll it to the so it's fine. But obviously, the point I was making there, I think those comments would be equally shared, wouldn't they, from everything? So that's fantastic. Yeah. Anyone want to add anything to that? Alex, yeah, go ahead, please, Alex. Thank you.
I think looking at this, and Mike said it at the end there, is actually, despite the cringe-inducing dad jokes at the beginning, it's. I think this is incredible. All you read about is local councils in all sorts of trouble, and I think you made the point, Chair, earlier on about some of the grief that we took about being unserious and looking at all these fluffy lefty things and all of this kind of thing. You can't see anything more serious than proper budget management. The sort of thing that I think this is the team has to be hugely commended for this. That having that sort of modest underspend on this outturn compared to some of the figures that you see quoted in the press and some of the areas, this is a real positive for Canterbury and for people in Canterbury to know that their council is managing the finances this well. And there's some really good, positive, good news stories in this report as well. I'd also just like to say that, no need to thank me, Councillor Castle, as I passed digital over with that record underspend due to some fantastic stewardship there. And hopefully you'll continue with that in next year's report. So, but no, I think that there's a lot of the stories within here that we were talking about with the KPIs early on that shows huge amounts of hard work from different parts of the council, the work of the officers to do this, to make sure that they're delivering on that, to make sure that they're cutting where they can, but not cutting services wherever possible. So I think it's a brilliant good news story, and well done to all involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mike said a few things there about doing the right things, the moral things, and sticking to our principles as well. And that, I think, and we still come up trumps, so we still do it because we spend the money where it has to be spent properly, effectively, and we still deliver the outcomes that people want, and more importantly, the outcomes that people need, because we are there, we are something. We're not a business, we're a council, and we do the right things. So I think do the right things is the right thing to do. So, good. If nothing else, I think we need to now formally note that, Mike. I think we're happy with that. Lots of nods of heads. And this time, item 13 is with you as well, Mike, in the similar vein. That's for the capital outturn.
Thank you, Chair. This will be a bit shorter, but it might still have another bad dad joke for you.
Christmas past again, of course, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a paragraph in this report that is worth reading, and it probably goes in all of the capital reports, but it does set the context of this, and that's that the complexity of capital projects makes it difficult to forecast the exact timing of capital spending. As a result, a budget may be provided for in 1 year, but the works are carried out in a later year. Occasionally, works can start earlier than planned, and a budget needs to be brought forward to an earlier year. So really, the budget is is a list of what we want to get done, but we can't always do it immediately in the next year. You could say Rome wasn't built in a day, or, as I understand they say in Rome, the Dane John electricity supply in Canterbury wasn't completed in a single budget cycle. But that's not quite so catchy. As we move on to our LGR, it's important we now focus on completing projects in the capital budget whilst this council still exists. I know we're all determined to do that. There's one thing I just want to pull out from this, and that really is, posed with the question, what would you do with £9 million? And we know that the previous Conservative administration built Station Road multi-storey car park, and yet we used the same amount of money to purchase 67 homes in Broadoak, put in roofs over the heads of families and not roofs over the heads of cars and pigeons. And that's something we can all be proud of, and I think we should, again, acknowledge the hard work of Officer Gary Peskett and also Pip Hazelton for achieving that. So all we're being asked today is just to note the actions of the budget directors, as they're called in here, which is just to carry forward the underspends for next year.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so we know where our spending priorities lie in this administration, don't we? We definitely do. That's for the people of this district first, 100%. Any other comments on this bit? Or shall we leave that Christmas past to Christmas past? Thank you. So are we all happy to note item 13? Thank you for that. That brings us to part B of our agenda tonight. I don't think there's any bits in part B of our agenda, is there? No. So it just remains that for me to remind you that our next Cabinet meeting is on Monday, the 3rd of November, 7 p.m. And I'm able to close this meeting at 20:52.